Great. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, Martec. What kind of a weird phrase is that? The hybridization of marketing and technology, which I mean, my goodness, like 20 years ago, like people would look at you cross-eyed, like, wait, what? Marketing and technology? I thought these things were on like opposite ends of the career spectrum. Like the high school guidance counselor, like, oh, technology, software, IT over here. Ah, marketing over there. But obviously, yeah, I mean, the internet changed all of that, and every business, to whatever degree, now engaging with its customers and, its partners through digital channels, all of a sudden, like, yeah, for the past couple decades, just like marketing and technology have gotten more and more entangled and entwined with each other. So that's the world that, yeah, I've been studying here for, oh my goodness, probably a couple decades at this point, and it just keeps getting more interesting.
So what is the drive behind sort of trying to use technology in marketing? Isn't marketing just fancy slogans and snappy advertising?
You know better than that.
Well, actually, the snappy slogans and fancy advertising are still valuable too. It's like actually all the things that we were doing in marketing before the internet exploded, they're still actually a valuable part of marketing. It's just we've sort of now layered on, and really what we've layered on is the fact that our customers who used to either interact with us just purely in the physical world, or they might have been like, yeah, listening to the radio or, watching something on TV or calling us on the phone center. Now, all of a sudden, they have all these ways through their web, apps on their mobile phone, increasingly, things like our Alexa, devices. I had to turn my Alexa off so it wouldn't like start that dialogue with me, right? So all these digital channels, and like marketers, like our job is actually at its most basic level, it's like reaching our audience, finding them, engaging them, serving their needs. And so now that we're having to do that through all these digital channels, that's kind of what got us. We've sort of backed ourselves into all of a sudden waking up and realizing, wait a second, I went into marketing and all of a sudden I'm spending like most of my day dealing with all this software and technology. Like, what happened?
Yeah, well, I was doing research on the internet on marketing because that's not I didn't go to school for marketing, but I just fell into it. And it's fun, I have to say. And I found the Martec stack and I thought, what the heck is a Martec stack? And so I dug into it a little more. And I do think it's very ingenious, Scott. And you're the one that started this, and you have the Stacky Awards. And it's basically, in my mind, a way to take all the tech that you're using for your marketing, put it in one place and figure out how it's working for you or if it's not working for you, right? And I think every company needs that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fascinating over these past few years where there are just so many pieces of software and so many apps that we're using, in our personal lives for sure. But like at work, if you're a marketer, you've got software you're using with your website. You might be doing some things to like manage your advertising on search engines. You probably have a CRM for like, customer records. What are we using for email? I mean, the list goes on. And all of a sudden, like you wake up and you realize, well, oh my goodness, I've got like a whole bunch of these different apps that I use for different things. What's the app I'm using to produce my podcast? What's the app I'm using to, design, a particular experience? And so as all these different technologies have sort of grown in the marketer's toolbox, the idea of these, illustrating these stacks and these stackages were twofold. First of all, just for your own sanity, being able to say, okay, what are all the different technologies that I am using for? Like, what does each one serve in my marketing mission? And how do I get them to work together? But then one of the other advantages of doing this as a illustration that stackies, as you mentioned, is I've encouraged people to, when they draw that illustration of what their stack is, not just use it for their own purposes, but if they're willing to actually share it with others, because this is so new for marketers having so many of these different technologies that we're really learning a lot from each other by seeing what are the different tools that different companies use to be able to deliver their digital marketing experience.
So James, did you have a question?
My question usually comes from the fact that there is such a proliferation of apps and tools. for marketing these days. You know, the biggest issue that I run into when I'm helping people that ask questions about it is they ask me, what do I recommend that they do in order to reduce the confusion and the choice of what you're going to use so that it's effective and isn't something they just throw money at and hope it works. You have any recommendations for how people should approach that?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the balance that people wrestle with is on one hand, simpler is better. It's like Occam's razor for your marketing technology. Like, you know, what you can do with the fewest possible tools, the better. But on the other side, recognizing that, yeah, the space of digital marketing is just continually evolving so rapidly that we do keep finding ourselves bringing in other specialist tools for new capabilities that maybe some of our older tools didn't have the support for. Now, this is part of what my mission is, you know, at HubSpot and sort of what I advocate for in the industry as large is I really feel the burden should be on the marketing technology companies to work harder at integrations, to really treat their products more as platforms, to work with partners, you know, to be able to do more of this integration between these different tools behind the scenes so that the marketer doesn't have to do it. I mean, I have this vision in my head and it's probably never going to be this simple, but like, you know, when you have an iPhone and you have like millions of apps in the App Store, you know, you can go and you can pick whichever set of apps you prefer and they just install, they kind of all work together. They have the same interface, you know, and so marketing tech stacks aren't that simple. They probably aren't going to be that simple for a while, but I kind of feel like that's the aspiration, you know, that marketing technology companies should be reaching for.
Excellent.
What do you think of the idea that, you know, right now the marketing technology is limited a bit because artificial intelligence and machine learning are yet to really be fully realized. What do you think is going to happen in the future now as AI and ML come around and become, as a computing stack, gets a little more capable and we get quantum computing, for example?
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's going to be like the 12 million patent that we're talking about, the application of AI to
We'll file it for you.
quantum computing to advertising. So here's hoping. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, my background actually was as a software engineer. And so when I was, you know, going to school, you know, several centuries ago, you know, I mean, like the big challenge for AI was, I mean, it wasn't a limit to the algorithms. It was the fact that computing power and the cost of that and the data, and it just wasn't there, you know. But now we like, you know, probably about 5 years or so ago, it was really over this past decade, we kind of hit that tipping point where all of a sudden actually we do have, you know, this expanse of data and we do have, you know, relatively cheap computing power in the cloud that all of a sudden is making a whole bunch of these like AI and machine learning algorithms feasible. Now, what's interesting is, you know, it turns out we're still in the process of learning, okay, great. You know, just because we can run these algorithms, you know, there's kind of a level above that of like, okay, how does this actually map into our business objectives? Like, you know, one of the big challenges marketers, you know, deal with is, you know, not just getting data, because we now have access to just tons and tons of data, but how do we make sure that the data is well organized? How do we make sure that the data is quality, that we're maintaining accuracy? All of the regulations and compliance issues, you know, around like making sure that when we have data about individuals, you know, that we have permission to use that data. You know, these are now some of the challenges we're wrestling with. But I think the goal of wrestling with that is to get to a place where we're going to be able to leverage more and more of those AI algorithms to help us do smarter marketing.
So Scott, the point of collecting all of this data and gathering this information is so that companies can find the consumers that are going to be most suited to their offerings, right? Because in the past, marketing, if you're just doing TV advertising, for example, you may be spending money reaching people that have no interest in buying a new car or, you know, buying this type of shampoo. And so it ends up being a waste of money. And with these technologies, you can target audiences that are most likely to be interested in their products, and you can learn more about how they actually purchase and what's important to them, etc. Is that correct?
Yeah, I sort of think of it as three kinds of technology. Certainly the one you mentioned of like using this to like almost analytically using it to like identify like where should we spend, you know, our marketing dollars to reach the right people at the right time. Huge opportunities there. A second is actually then when we're delivering, you know, the content or the experience or the offer to those individuals, you know, are we able to leverage the data to target the best offer to them? Personalization is what they often, you know, call this. But then there's even a third kind of technology that we see in marketing technology, which is really about the actual delivery of the experience itself. And so like a great example would be like, you know, if you go to a website, you know, and instead of having to hunt around on the website, you know, looking for something, you know, there's a chatbot there, and like you interact with this chatbot and it helps take you to the information you were looking for. You've probably used some of these, and probably some of them I'm betting suck, you know, and maybe some of them are a little bit better, you know, and so that's sort of one of the places where we see like, you know, natural language technology, you know, an AI really focused on language interfaces to make those better and better so that when the customer is interacting with some piece of your technology, the technology is helping them get what they want faster and easier.
Excellent. Kenya. So Kenya works at iHeart, and I consider her a marketing genius, a creative genius. She may not agree, but she had the concept for this whole show, and we're in our 4th year now. We've been doing it for 3 years. So Kenya, do you have a question or comment for Scott?
I do. I have a question for you, Scott. What would you say are some marketing like must-haves when it comes to what tools and analytics that marketers should have as like a baseline for what they're measuring?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically 3 things pretty much every marketer needs at this point. First of all, you need a CRM, and it doesn't have to be a super fancy, expensive CRM. You know,
Can you make lawyers use a CRM? Jim's trying to help me get the lawyers to use our CRM.
We've had a CRM for 2 years and nobody knows how to use it.
Except me. I'm the only one.
So if you don't have a CRM, what you have is you have a spreadsheet, you know, which I guess is the most primitive kind of CRM. But all right, whatever you want to call it, you want something that's basically your records of who are your customers, who are your prospects, because you need to, you know, be able to keep track of that. The 2 other things that you need is you absolutely need some sort of way to deliver an experience to them on the web, you know, and the great news is there's so many tools out there now for helping you deliver a great web experience, or if you're running more of a, you know, e-commerce business, right, you know, a tool like Shopify, great, I mean, just great stuff there. And then the third thing you typically need is some sort of way to then be able to engage with that audience, usually through email, depending on where you are and what you're doing. You might also be engaging with them, you know, through SMS or, you know, maybe a mobile app. But you need some sort of way that you're able to then proactively communicate with customers and prospects who have opted in. You know, but if you get those 3 pieces, right, I've got my system of record for customers, I've got a way to deliver great experiences over the web, and I've got a way to like reach out to them, you know, through channels like, you know, email. Boy, you were like, yeah, I mean, that is the foundation for which you can do so much in digital marketing today.
Now, if you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, somebody who's thinking about starting a business, how do they get their arms around all of this, and where do they start if they plan to start with digital marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the great news is, you know, if you're just getting started, there are so many tools now that will actually bring a lot of these things together. I mean, you know, HubSpot is one, but, you know, in all fairness, there are many others out there. But the idea is you can usually start with one tool that will say, okay, here's a way of keeping track of your customers. Here's a way to get a basic presence on the web. Here's a way to communicate with people with email, and really let you focus your attention on the development of your actual business, like what your idea is, who you're trying to reach, what that fit is going to be. You know, there's all sorts of wonderful and amazing things you can do to expand your digital marketing capabilities over time, you know, but when you're just getting started, yeah, I usually recommend keeping your Martec stack as simple as possible is probably the best way to do it.
Well, one thing I like about HubSpot, and we've looked at it, and we're gonna have to revisit that, of course. We're doing some changes now, but one thing I like about HubSpot is it doesn't just give you the front end of this is what you tell people. It gives you the back end of these are the results. This is your ROI. This is where people are looking. This is what's working for you. This is what's not. And that's really important because you know, it's like throwing a net out into the Pacific Ocean and hoping you catch a salmon. If you don't have that feedback, right?
Yeah, yeah, and this is why, I mean, like, there's all these topics, like when you get into more advanced things, people talk about how data science, is being used, more and more in marketing. In fact, when we were talking earlier about using AI and machine learning, there is so much value to be derived from just understanding with all these digital touch points we have with customers, what's working and what's not. So what's that old like Wanamaker phrase? Like, I know half my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. That's kind of been like the gauntlet that was thrown down, for digital marketing. And like a lot of people are trying to say, we're going to figure out which of that 50% isn't working. So
once you figure out, please let me know, because I ask the same question weekly. So
Jim, do you have another question or comment?
No, I think the conversation's interesting, and there are many things that have to be considered when you're doing marketing, and you lose track. It's easy to lose track.
Absolutely.
And if you can keep focused, that's your best bet.
Yeah.
Well, I really like the Martec idea, and if Scott, is there a place where our audience can find out more information about Martec? And there's some
Martec stack.
The Martec stack. Scott,
Martec sounds like really cool though. Like, that's the technology we use to like land things on other planets. So
okay, but is there a place where our audience can find out more information about this?
Sure. Well, I write a blog on all this, and it's chiefmartec.com. So yeah, please come on by for a visit.
The other thing is, if you do Google Images and you look at the stackies, I think it was the 2017 stackies, you had Microsoft, like all the big players there. But these Martec stacks are pieces of art. Like Microsoft's was this big curling thing, right? That curled around on itself. And then some of them are like cones and some of them are rectangles. I mean, but they're all different colors. They're really incredible. Right?
I think we should do a Gearhart Law Martec stack with pancake layers, because I think that would get our attorney's attention more than anything else. But
I don't know, I like Microsoft, but of course, they have tons of money. But it was really interesting when I looked at your Stacky Awards. Now, how often are you doing those now?
So we've been doing it every year since about 2015. And yeah, I'm just so grateful with, companies of all kinds. In fact, actually, we're running one now. I just saw the Stacky come in today from United Healthcare, one of their divisions. And it's just fascinating to see like what are the different pieces of technology these companies use. But to your point, it's even more interesting to see how do they think about visualizing this? Like what's in their head of like how these things are related to each other and their functions for the business. So yeah, it's if you Google Martec stackies, you're right. There's just a ton of images out there, and we'll see if we have a gallery for them at some point.
Richard's telling me we have to go. I do want to say one last thing though. So I presented these to our team in a marketing meeting, but what fascinated me was that Red Wing shoes was next to Microsoft. Right? So the point that I got from that is everybody needs one of these. Right.
Well, again, like when you're just starting out, it's okay if your Martec stack has one product in it. That's totally fine. But yes, as you grow and expand, know that there are lots of examples out there you can look to.
Okay.
Yes, and so everybody stack away with your marketing technology. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart.
Jim Dietz as our co-host.
And with Jim Dietz as our co-host, we've had a fascinating discussion with Scott Brinker, the Martec guy, and from HubSpot, and we'll be back right after this commercial message.